3 seconds before the world changed, Adam was happy. Not the pale, distracted happiness of a man who has forgotten what sadness feels like. The real kind. The kind that has no ceiling because nothing has ever hurt you yet. He was standing in a garden where every tree was full and every animal knew his name, and the God who made everything came walking in the evenings just to talk. Adam had never slept a night alone. He had never buried anything. He had never looked at the person he loved most and felt the specific coldness of knowing something between them had shifted and would never fully shift back. He did not know those things were possible yet. That is what the garden was. Not just a place, a condition. The condition of a human being who has everything and knows it and has not yet discovered what it feels like to reach for something more. And then she turned around. She was still smiling. She was still Eve, still the one God had pulled from his own side while he slept, still the person whose face he had memorized without trying because it was the only face there was. But something in her eyes was different, something quiet and original that had been there every morning since she opened them for the first time. Gone now. Replaced by something he had never seen before, because you cannot see knowledge on a person's face until they know something you do not. In her hand was a piece of fruit. Adam recognized the tree it came from. And here's the part that changes everything you think you know about this story. Adam did not stumble onto this moment. He was not somewhere else in the garden, tending flowers, unaware. He had been standing here the entire time. He heard the serpent's first question. He heard Eve's answer. He heard the lie that dressed itself up as wisdom, and watched his wife believe it, and reach for the branch, and take the fruit, and eat. He watched all of it. He said nothing. And now she is holding it out toward him, and the smile on her face is asking him to close the distance that just opened between them. And his hand has not moved yet, and the whole future of the human race is sitting in the silence between them like a held breath. There is a word in the original Hebrew of Genesis 3:6 that almost every English translation quietly removes. One word, 4 letters. It rewrites the entire verdict of who was responsible for what happened next. We will get to it, but right now you need to stay in this moment with Adam. Because this moment is not ancient. This moment is not safely behind glass in a history you have nothing to do with. You have stood here, maybe not in a garden, maybe not with fruit, but you have stood in the exact same silence. The person you love on one side, the line you swore you would never cross on the other. In the terrible, specific gravity of choosing between them, Adam is about to choose. Most people who have heard this story their entire lives carry a picture in their head that is wrong. The picture goes like this. Eve is alone in the garden. The serpent finds her alone. She eats. She goes and finds Adam somewhere else and brings him the fruit. Adam, hearing nothing of the original conversation, trusting his wife, takes it and eats. 2 victims of the same deception, separated only by timing. That picture is not what Genesis says. But read Genesis 3:6 one more time. Slowly. She gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. Who was with her? Adam was there, standing beside her, present for the entire conversation. The serpent did not find Eve alone. He found them together and chose to speak to her instead of him. And Adam stood in silence while the serpent dismantled God's command piece by piece. Then he ate. 1 Timothy 2:14 is one of the most uncomfortable verses in the New Testament, for a specific reason. Paul writes, Adam was not deceived, but the woman was deceived and became a transgressor. Eve genuinely believed the serpent's argument. She was wrong, but she was sincerely wrong. Adam had no such excuse. He was not tricked. He understood exactly what the fruit was, and what eating it would cost. He ate it anyway. Augustine, writing in the 5th century, calls it disordered love. Adam loved Eve more than he loved obedience to God, not because he was weak, because he made a choice. He looked at his wife and decided that losing her to the fall was worse than joining her in it. He sinned knowingly. 3 words, the most damning 3-word verdict in the history of Christian theology. Every person alive has stood at the edge of that choice. The thing you knew was wrong, the person you could not bear to lose, the moment when love and obedience pointed in opposite directions, and you had to pick one. Adam picked. So here is the question nobody preaches on Sunday morning. If Adam had looked at that fruit and said no, what happens to Eve? Because Eve has already eaten. That is the fixed point in this scenario. The serpent found her, deceived her, she ate. That happened before Adam made his choice. So we are not asking, what if the fall never started? We are asking, what if one person chose to stay clean, while the person standing next to them was already falling? Now follow where that single refusal travels. Adam refuses. Eve has eaten. For the first time in history, two people made from the same bone are standing on different sides of a line. The first silence between a husband and wife that is not peace. The first moment when being together and being right are not the same thing. God comes walking in the garden in the cool of the day. In the real story, he asks, "Where are you?" And Adam answers from hiding. But in this alternate branch, Adam is standing in the open, unfallen. And Eve is somewhere nearby, already knowing something has shifted inside her that she cannot name. What does God do? His own law is clear. The soul that sins shall die. Eve sinned, Adam did not. Does God expel Eve alone? Can a garden built for two function as a garden for one? The fracture does not stay personal. Romans 5:12 says sin entered the world through one man. Not one woman, one man. The legal and cosmic weight of the fall rests on Adam's choice, which means if Adam does not eat, the entire architecture of human history runs on different fuel. No covenant at Sinai, no sacrificial system, no priesthood. The entire shadow system that pointed towards something greater, gone with one man's refusal. Now we reach the question that keeps serious theologians awake at night. If Adam never sins, does Jesus still come? This is not a story about a rule being broken. This is not a story about a punishment being triggered. This is not a story about a legal mechanism that God invented and then had to honor. This is a story about what God wanted from the very beginning, and whether one man's obedience could have delivered it. Because here's the question Paul was really asking in Romans 5. Not who is guilty, he is asking about architecture. He writes that while we were enemies, we were reconciled to God by the death of his Son. Enemies. And reconciliation does not just mean the problem is fixed. It means the relationship is restored to something it was always meant to be. What was it always meant to be? Go back before the fall, before the fruit. Go back to the moment God forms Adam from the dust and breathes into his nostrils, and the man becomes a living soul. No other creature in Genesis receives that. The animals are spoken into existence. Adam is breathed into. From the very first moment, the relationship between God and humanity is not simply creator and creation. It is closer, more personal, more costly. God did not want a garden full of obedient creatures. He wanted sons and daughters who chose him. The cross is not plan B. 1 Peter 1:20 says the Lamb was foreknown before the foundation of the world, before Adam, before Eve, before the tree, before any of it. God did not watch Adam reach for the fruit and scramble to find a solution. The solution was written into the architecture of eternity before the first stone of creation was set. Which means the question is not whether Jesus comes in a world where Adam says no. The question is why he comes. In the world we live in, he comes to rescue. But in a world where Adam holds the line, the rescue mission looks different. And yet the relationship between God and humanity still has somewhere further to go. Obedience is a beginning. It is not a destination. The destination was always union. The kind Jesus prays for in John 17, that they may be one, even as we are one. That kind of oneness cannot be commanded into existence. It can only be chosen, freely, from the inside. Now we go back to the word, the one that almost every English translation removes from Genesis 3:6. The word is imah. It means with her. Most English Bibles say she gave the fruit to her husband and he ate. but the Hebrew says she gave it to her husband who was with her, and he ate. 3 words that change the entire moral weight of the story. Adam was there, listening, watching his wife be deceived in real time and choosing to say nothing. Augustine was right. He did not sin out of confusion. He sinned out of love. Disordered love. Love that placed the creature above the Creator. And the tragedy is not that he loved Eve. The tragedy is that he could not imagine loving God and Eve at the same time. Holding the line and still holding her hand. Here is the 50-year verdict. A world where Adam says no does not escape the problem. It makes the problem more visible. Because the fall is not only about one act of disobedience, it is about what lives inside the human heart that made that act possible in the first place. The capacity for disordered love. The tendency to take the good thing and put it where the best thing belongs. That tendency was already in the garden, whether Adam ate or not. It was in his children before they were born. It is in you right now. God knew that. The cross was never only about fixing the legal consequence of one man's choice. It goes deeper than consequences. It goes to the level of what we are, what we keep doing, what we cannot stop doing on our own. Jesus is not what would have happened if Adam had been stronger. Jesus is what happens when God decides that the answer to human weakness is not a better human. The answer is God becoming human and doing from the inside what we could never do from the outside. 3 things to take with you. God does not build plans that human choices can permanently destroy. You are not living in a story that went wrong. You are living in a story still being told by a writer who knew every plot point before the first word was spoken into the dark. Second, you have stood under that tree. You know the moment where disordered love felt like the most reasonable thing in the world. The distance between you and Adam is not as wide as Sunday school made it seem. And third, you were never an accident waiting to be fixed. You were always the point. So here's the question I want you to sit with this week, and I genuinely want your answer in the comments below. If Adam's greatest failure was choosing Eve over God, and if God's answer to that failure was to come down himself and choose us over everything, what does that tell you about the kind of love you are actually dealing with? Leave your answer below. I read every single one.